Episode 60 of Strange Brow Radio. Thank you again for listening, tuning in, subscribing, and sharing this channel. Again, my name's Tobe Johnson, and today we're speaking to extended experiencer Mike Paterson of Sasquatch, Ontario. Now, some of you know that name very well, know the name Nefertia very well, and we have much to discuss, and we'll get to all that. But first, I want to thank our sponsor. Again, Feral by Aaron is where you can get all your sound alchemy tool needs. Now, maybe you don't know you need a drum, rattle, or smudge fan, but if you go on Etsy.com, you will want one, because they're museum-quality, beautiful tools, and there'll be new merchandise coming up shortly, so check back at Etsy.com. Again, that's Feral by Aaron, E-R-Y-N. Okay. More in a moment with our guest, Mike Paterson. Sasquatch, Ontario. Of course, in Ontario, Canada, is where Mike Paterson started his YouTube channel. A YouTube channel that made a lot of bold claims that not only was Sasquatch visiting their property, but there was also a lot of incredible, shall we say, divisive audio captured of language from a Sasquatch named Nefertia. I mean, the only way to really talk about Mike's case is to be bold and blunt about the claims. So rather than hear everybody's opinion of what's going on in Ontario, I thought it'd be good if Mike and I spoke one-on-one. So that's what you're about ready to listen to, is a candid, frank conversation involving what an extended experiencer's interaction may indeed look like. Now, I will admit I was surprised over some overlap of the nuances of Mike's phenomena and the phenomena we've experienced and the phenomena that I've talked to other witnesses about. And so these commonalities took me back to a degree, because some of the stuff is lesser spoken about or researched or mentioned. And it's those kind of details that you're always looking for when it comes to the real McCoy. But as always, with the cases that you've heard up here, I mean, you've had 59 interviews previous to this one here to make up your mind with the guests that have come on here. And my job is to not try to make up your mind for you, but give you enough content to where you can derive your own opinion and solutions on how to handle this kind of stuff. So without further ado, my conversation with Mike Paterson. All right, we're on the phone with Mike Paterson of Sasquatch, Ontario. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, Tobe, how you doing?
Good. All right, it is an early morning here in the Pacific Northwest. And Mike, you're in Ontario, so you're 3 hours ahead of us, and
Yep.
You are continually getting activity in your area. And so I wanted to talk to you not only about the Sasquatch activity that you have, but also this other paradigm that coalesces around the Bigfoot activity. And maybe we can pass some ideas around here, but go ahead and tell people who you are, Mike, and a general idea of your story.
I'm just, I'm just your average guy, man, who started looking into this subject back in 2008 after spending, spare time in the woods, doing some photography and stuff. And I just had this epiphany to start searching for these guys. And at this point, and you know how it is, at this point, I wonder, where that thought came from, if it was just happenstance or if I had a little bit of a nudge, So I've been documenting Sasquatch activity for the past 11 years, and then the past 7 years have been a situation up in the Kawartha Lakes region at a private property. And it's just been absolutely nuts. And 100% of the visits, we have activity going on with a family. And the main character, as many people have come to understand his name's Nefertia, and he's just he's a funny guy.
Okay, so you are on a first name basis with a Sasquatch, which is probably a rare thing to be. You get daily visits from Nefertia, do you?
No, not at home. But like I do get activity here. It's not nothing like up there at this point. And I almost think, some of the stuff that's happened at home, I'm, I'm quite sure they've been here, but I'm also starting to think there's another family that's here. And it's like I'm kind of starting over from, like I did with Neff's family. It shows up that way in the audio when I'm putting audio out at home, and the activity that's happening around it. It's not as advanced, right? So that's what makes me think it's a different family.
Okay, so you had a beginning. You had a foundation to your understanding of what was going on, and I imagine, just like in our case, it's trying to figure out whether or not there is something that exists. And now you're at the point where you're figuring out who they are and what they are. Talk about that transition from learning the existence to trying to figure out what the existence is.
Well, existence really solidified for me on it would have been October 25th, 2008, at 4:30 in the afternoon, when one of them vocalized really close. And that was basically the moment that put me on this path and changed my life, really. And just it's like that triple, really guttural, raspy whoop call that he sounded 10 feet tall. He filled the forest with that call, and my jaw just dropped. And even though I didn't see anything, I knew what it was. It was a no-brainer. You can't. Even though I denied what it was for a couple of weeks. It's still, you know what it is, right? And that's basically started this journey. And I went about 4 years after that, visiting that same area, having multiple incidents in multiple locations, actually, until I met Dwayne back in 2012 and started investigating his family's property. And that's that's when they really started showing their presence. And it starts off slow, and and it's very slow progression. It's like baby steps. It's like an unveiling, and it doesn't take long though to figure out, especially with snow on the ground, that they have quite the abilities. And the stuff indoors didn't start happening for it didn't take that long either. And, you just start seeing little weird things happening, like a little figurine that was on top of the fridge. All of a sudden it's on the part, in between where the door and the freezer up top of the fridge opens. And it's like, okay, well, how did that get moved there? That it's going to fall if you open up the door, right? So there's nobody here, and that shouldn't be moving on its own. And you just start noticing little things like that, right? And then it just continues to progress. And at this point, it's physical contact, mind speak. There's been visuals. There's been all kinds of audio and manifestation of objects out of thin air, and footprints that are documented that go nowhere. Single footprints and trackways, and the handprints, even fingerprints, and it's just on and on, right? It's they show you a part of them that really it shatters this paradigm, and a lot of people have difficult time accepting that this stuff's going on, right? It's understandable.
Right.
It really does show you how conditioned we are too when you have this contact. It really exposes that human conditioning and just seeing the reactions from others. Yeah, it's crazy stuff. Crazy fun.
Yeah, it can be. I mean, you've said some things in the last 5 minutes that if I were looking into your case and you were speaking about small little weird things happening, especially this little figurine on the refrigerator placed in a precarious way. And that may not sound like much, but it's a very interesting anecdote as far as the types of activity that you may find inside your house. And now you're in a place where you're comfortable with activity coming from outside to inside.
Yeah, I have no problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite enjoyable. Like last visit, they're doing. I got poked in the back twice last visit indoors. They used to always do that outside, and I just asked them one day. I said, "Hey, you guys never do this indoors. Can you do it indoors?" So they've started doing that,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm using a sketch pad and a chalkboard, so I'm asking questions. Like last visit, I actually asked them. I said, I just kind of stand there or sit there and speak out loud. I said, I'm human. We call ourselves human. What do you call yourselves? What name do you have for your people? And we stepped outside. This was almost right when I arrived too. I was only there a few minutes, so I left the chalkboard on the table, and we both stepped outside. Come back in, and on the chalkboard they'd written "Mushta Mushtaba," and okay, cool. So just to see that sort of thing, see those writings, right? That communication is amazing. So yeah, the activity indoors, and also I was sitting in a chair, and this ball, kind of like a hockey ball, appeared right in front of my face, bouncing off the floor. Just I sat there and watched it come right out of thin air. They've done this right in front of my eyes numerous times, right? And yeah, I'm fine with it. It's cool. It's fun.
Mm-hmm.
There's no malevolence there. So, and they've shown over the last 7 years now.
Mm-hmm.
They're quite humorous, funny, light-hearted people that just kind of exposing their existence and what they're about.
Okay, I want to get to some of the attributes of the things that you're speaking about here, but I want to ask specifically about the beginnings and the origin of this because you were working early on with Dwayne Scott. And do you and Dwayne still have a working relationship, or where are things now with the cabin and you and your access to his property?
Yeah, we'd like I said, this started up about late September, or in 2012, and we made about roughly 80 visits or so till March 20th, 2015. That was the last visit when Dwayne pulled the plug because of the trespassing and stalking and harassment that's really permeated this situation. And by somebody that I'm well aware of who it is. He's a BFRO member, and I've had nothing but problems with this little slime ball he is. Dwayne didn't know at the time if I had anything to do with what was going on. Right? He didn't really know me that much, and because I never knew him before this. So it went, after the 20th of March, which was the last visit where I documented really awesome conversation with Nefertia. I had a momentum going with those vocals. It was continuous, and it was just, I think I was on about the ninth one where, he'd yell out and we'd go back and forth, right? And then, suddenly I get the rug pulled from under my feet. That was difficult. That was hard to take. And since then, I reached out to him a few times, and we were at each other's throats for a while because he was calling it a hoax. He wanted to, harassment and stalking and to go away, right? So that's what he did. He called it a hoax to try and make this disappear, and obviously it didn't work because I wasn't allowing it. You know, I was like, no way, man, you're not doing that. And we've since talked. This is a while back now, and we've been working together ever since still. So things are going great. You know, they literally show up for us 100% of the visits. There's as much stuff going on indoors as out. No, you know, a lot of people think it's a hoax. That they think, well, you know, maybe you're being hoaxed and you're just not seeing it. It's like, no. There's hundreds of incidents, and there's stuff that happens out of thin air in front of my eyes. And I'm very diligent in, you know, my observations of,
Right.
yeah, just.
So Dwayne had a conversation with you about the fact that he was going to set you up and then basically defame you so other people would believe what he's saying and not come around the property. Is that the case?
Conversation with me. I don't know. I can't remember what the back and forth between us was. It wouldn't have been much of a conversation if he was doing that. That would have been more of a threat.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I don't really recall that. I just know we were at each other's throats back and forth. So.
Okay. I want to get some of this out of the way so we can get more into the meat and potatoes, but I know the backstory behind, you know, it's somewhat controversial of what you're presenting, but because of what I've presented, it's very controversial as well. And I understand how difficult it is for people to believe certain parts of the audio portion of Sasquatch Ontario, because there's difficult parts of the El Moon Lab that are, you know, they're hard to share because they're so unbelievable. Nefatia's voice is, it's very controversial sounding. And did you struggle with how Nefatia vocalizes because of the nature of it? Doesn't sound like anything I'd ever heard before as far as percussive speech. What do you think is going on there? Is Nefatia trying to vocalize in a way that you understand better, or what's your instinct about that?
I know from interacting with, you know, different family members. I think, you know, a lot of people, I think they assume they should all sound a certain way or all sound the same, or it's like, no, man, these are people, you know, they differ just as we do. We're people, we all differ. And, you know, so some people, they're expecting this rapid chatter talk, and it's like, we don't know anything really about them. So you can't expect anything when it comes to that, especially with no knowledge of their really of their vocals or anything that can really solidify, you know, give us any conclusions that make sense with how do I say this? They're just different, right? And Neff's voice, yeah, he's shown that. To me, it sounds like he speaks multiple languages, and I'm at the point where I'm wondering if he's speaking multiple languages, even in a sentence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like English, and there's one piece. So what is pauta? And instantly he's like ni chu tu da do da, and you know, and I hear that, and I think that's language. Or he's speaking English, or I hear stuff that has sounds like an Asian dialect to it, or stuff that sounds very native. And sometimes it's all in one, you know, little sentence that he blurts out. And he's also vocalizing with inhale and exhale. And some of the accusations, I kind of have to laugh. I'm like, here, let me get you a piece of audio. Here, try this. All right, try this. Let's see you do that without breaking into a coughing fit. So yeah, I understand the vocals are controversial because they're very clear. They would gravitate to my audio all the time, right? So it's clear, it's close, and
Go
it's
back go back to that statement you made about it gravitating towards your audio. What do you mean by that?
well, wherever I place my audio recorder, they would just hang it there, and sometimes, especially early on, it would be like all night long.
Mm-hmm.
Every once in a while, I might snap a stick or clack a rock. Um, I learn a lot about their behavior through my audio recording,
Right.
and then they know what the audio does. They would vocalize right into it sometimes, right? I'd run audio mics through my sunroof in my vehicle for one of the recorders, and sometimes Neff would be there right at my vehicle banging on my car roof while he's vocalizing.
Mm-hmm.
So they know what the devices do. They're well aware of that, and some of the stuff I've received is just it's out there.
What do you think the idea behind audio versus video is? Because we always speak about there being a permission slip for audio, but there's definitely a no when it comes to capturing them on video. What do you think the difference to them is? Do you have any ideas?
I guess that visual is very it's just different. Maybe they just don't want their image shown, but at the same time, um, I it's not. I don't think that's it's a definite no. It's permission only with photographing.
Okay, with that said, have you deployed cameras and come up with anything anomalous or Bigfoot or otherwise?
I started putting trail cams out early on, and I took them down after a while after I started realizing the intelligence we were dealing with. And at one point, I went out and bought a point and shoot camera and started leaving it out for them, not as a way of trying to trick them for a photo, but just as a device, as a tool for communication and something to play with. And they did end up putting literally dozens of images on it, some even appearing. I would leave this on the kitchen table. It didn't start off like that. It started off in the forest, but eventually progressed to inside the cottage where I'd leave this on the table with the sketch pad, all that stuff, right? And these images started appearing. So we'd even be sitting at the table. The camera would be within arm's reach, and I would just keep checking it, taking a look every few minutes, and images would even appear as we're sitting there. And this thing's, it's like, okay, well, that's new. That was on there 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, there's a photograph of what looks like a fish's eye on your YouTube page or one of the pages there. And it struck a chord with me because early on when I was getting to know Lisa and Sean Fay that were witnesses in Cottage Grove, Lisa was claiming that something was accessing her phone while it was in her pocket or while she was asleep. And she would wake up to images of the farm animals' eyeballs, including animals that she didn't know. They have a little farm, but one of them was the eyeball of a goat that didn't belong to her. Is that what we're talking about? Things like that?
Yeah. I took a lot of crap for those eyeballs, and there is a fish hanging up in Dwayne's cottage, but that eyeball doesn't match. It's not the same one. So I think it comes from another place as well. As one image I got with this crazy wild blonde hair, and it was indoors. And I remember when I was putting that in, Dwayne's like, I don't know, man, you sure? You're gonna take a lot of crap. I said, yeah, I know, but it's truth. So to hell with it. Let's do it. And that that image showed the indoors. It was not inside from inside the cottage either. It was somewhere else, right? So
It's, so much of this is just enough for you to enjoy, but never enough for your neighbor to enjoy. It's almost like if you dare share this, people will think less of the information because it is so tailor made for the witness or whoever they're interacting with. Um, it's a very difficult thing sometimes to share and talk about because of that fact, and you almost have to just keep it in the family. Are there things that you still don't talk about because they're just too strange, too personal?
well, the stuff I put out some stuff that's really strange, like voicemail. I got a voicemail from Nefertia after we joked about it the night before, because of receiving a photo or a drawing through phones. At one point, Dwayne calls me up and says, "Did you send me a drawing on the phone?" I said, "What?" And he sends it to me. He took a screenshot and it said it came from my phone, my name. And it's like, no, man, it wasn't me. And this was back in 2013. So now we know it was them. And we were joking about that. And I said, yeah, watch next. Send me a voicemail. And that's what I got on the way home the next morning. It showed up on my phone as it didn't even say private call or anything. It was just there was no information. My phone didn't ring or anything. I just kind of looked on the seat beside me and I saw the flash from my phone and something was there and I played it back and I just broke out laughing there. And it's like that stuff is so crazy. But as far as telling everything, no, there's some information I do hold back that. There's certain things that I just don't, it's nobody's business, and um, some of the information, it's a bit, it's a bit too
Right.
much.
I mean, we tried to hold back a lot of this, but eventually you just end up, saying it. Maybe you're a couple beers into a story and all of a sudden a detail slips out and you're like, oh, no, no. Now I got to explain this one because it's, been posted to social media. It's not as though you can't talk about it. It's not wanting to talk about it because of the ramifications of having to defend something so unbelievable. Now, what you just said, I'll go ahead and release one of these facts here. When you're talking about audio or video impressions without a date stamp or time stamp, that is something that happened recently. And maybe you can bounce off this story here, so I'll tell it real quick. I'll lay the groundwork out for the weird. Um, Daryl, the property owner of the Al Moon Lab, was up with a guy named Ren, who was his neighbor. And Ren has a pretty interesting story. He worked with Lauren Coleman and Lloyd Pye previous and just happened to live maybe a half a mile down the road from us. And so, of course, he had a vested interest in this strange and unusual, although the stories and what we were showing him was pretty hard for him to wrap his mind around. There came a point when they were above the infamous Al Moon property, uh, and they were doing a night sit, and they saw lights rise up from the forest floor and go across like a clothesline through the trees, relatively close, and then the footsteps started to come in on them, and the smell started to come in on them. Now, I've never smelt smell in and around the property that I would say is a terrible, awful Sasquatchy smell, if that is a Sasquatch at all. But we went back to check out this area in the daytime and have them basically do a recreation. And after we had left the area and they explained what had happened to them, Daryl calls me up and says, I've got a video with no picture, no date stamp, no time stamp that has ended up with audio only on my phone. And this is what, and I don't have it queued up here, but in short, something is utilizing Daryl's voice to speak another language. And you hear Daryl's voice say some very unusual, almost backwards garbled language talk. And then there's this woman conversing back and forth that almost seems like she is predicting the fact that we are going up into the woods, saying things as a matter of fact, like, oh, they're going to come out, something to that effect. So there's this weird back and forth. But getting back to the previous witness, Lisa and Sean, who are saying that they have strange images that show up on their phone that show, in particular, the eyeball of a farm animal. And then the video evidence that Daryl presented, which there's no way this guy could hoax this. I mean, first of all, it's such a complex language that it's speaking, and it's his voice. And I know that it's not him for those two main reasons. So it gets back to you, Mike. What you're saying is so familiar and unexpected in our conversation. You and I have never met before. That these are the kind of things that I look for legitimacy. And so, have you had multiple examples of things like this appearing on digital devices?
Oh yeah, definitely. There was, there would be a video as well, because I would leave video camera on the table, and they would impose. I say impose because it just shows up mysteriously, right? Short little clips, like a couple seconds, 2, 3, 4 seconds. I think that, that I would have this kind of movement on video of, you can see hair and stuff, but no, it's just completely ambiguous. And so one time I said to Neff, I said, Neff, the longest clip you really given me is like 4 seconds, and you never say anything. Can I hear your voice? So after I said that, I end up getting a 9-second clip of a vocalization on the video, but this time now there's no video with it, just audio, right? But he's constantly showing, yeah, I understand the context of what you're saying, and that shows up in these instances like that you explain, right? But yeah, so there's been little video clips, audio clips, photos, all kinds of it, through the phone, any of the electronic devices. It seems they don't have any problem manipulating them.
No, now you're on the same boat as me, that there's other things happening in concert with this. Do you believe that Sasquatch is basically the foundation or the catalyst for these other things coming in on it? What's the relationship between UFOs, ghost, all of the supernatural joining in on it?
Well, the UFO connection, I know there's a few reports out there with claims of them being seen coming and going from UFOs, and it was I've had 5 incidents with UFOs. 3 of them, or 4 of them, were up in the area. 3 of them were consecutive visits of the moving object up in space, giving off a really bright flash that I'd never witnessed before. And then suddenly I'm getting it 3 visits in a row, basically directly overhead up in space, watching these objects, and say, okay, well, that's weird. I've never seen that in my life before. And I watch the stars, right? I've camped a lot, and I've never seen anything like, what happened there. And then 3 times, 3 visits in a row, I get that. And then there was 2 UFO incidents since, I think it was September 2018, 15 days apart, one during the day and one at night. And the conditions are pristine. And this is another thing with Sasquatch activity, their timing is always impeccable. So we're dealing with consciousness, really. There's a collective consciousness that I do believe the Sasquatch, they're the main players with what we're dealing with. It's terrestrial, really, but it seems to me there's an extraterrestrial origin going on. I think that with the Sasquatch activity, I have no idea if there's other involvement from other different types of beings. Like there is a picture where a face showed at the window at Dwayne's cottage, and it's got these huge black eyes. It's, it's not a good picture, but you can see the eyes, no problem. And they're very not so almond shaped like a gray ET, that they talk about, but definitely huge black eyes that are, it's nothing, that we know of any biological living thing that resides in our forests anyways. So I do believe there's other things that are either, interact with the Sasquatch that, and I've actually, I have one piece of audio too, where I have a Sasquatch speak, and then you can hear him give a little chuckle about halfway through this piece of audio. It's like he's having a conversation with something, but the other sound is very electronic like, and it's very bizarre, and it's making this talk, or whatever you want to call it, simultaneous as the Sasquatch is speaking, and it's just very bizarre. It's like, what the hell is he talking to, right? And it makes me think, like, okay, that sounds like another type of being, although I have no idea because I can't see it, right? So definitely other stuff going on.
Some of the witnesses I've spoken with, including myself, have seen smaller boot-like footprints in the snow. It seems that these footprints have shown up more often than not. Have you seen other little tiny footprints that maybe look like indicative of a boot or a shoe?
That's really interesting you say that, because this just happened last visit. Because at one point we were out there and looking in the snow, and we see this line of this short trackway, and it's perfect tightrope, right? And the steps are big steps, but it's not. It looks like a boot. And at first, like, I even have the audio of me saying, it's somebody messing with us. Use another word, but for a sec, I was like, I hope nobody's here screwing around with us, right? And then all of a sudden, I hear Dwayne give a chuckle, and I said, "What's going on?" At the end of that little boot trackway, or whatever you want to call it, there was no treads in it. It just didn't look like their feet. But at the end of it, there was a Sasquatch footprint, which was blatant. It's like, oh, okay, now we know, right? And we just kind of laughed, but it was bizarre. Yeah, so that's really interesting you say that, because that just happened to us. So, and I took video of that, which I will actually put in the next video.
Now, are you saying that these are barefoot prints in the snow, like you see a Sasquatch print, or I'm trying to understand what you saw?
Well, the short trackway with these prints that looked like, they didn't look like Sasquatch footprints, but at the same time, it walked like they walk, how they tend to show their trackways with this direct line, this tightrope walk. So these 3 or 4 footprints in a row. It kind of looked almost like human boot, but not, right? There was no tread, right? There was no defined toes or anything.
Right. You didn't see like the swoosh symbol or the Reebok symbol on the tread.
Like
gotcha.
That.
Right.
And at the end of that little line of trackway, there was a Sasquatch footprint that was, clear. It was perfectly clear, and hair in it and all that. And so that, that was the first, right? I've never seen that before. It was like, well, that's kind of bizarre. Why wouldn't the print show up, as the one at the end of the trackway? So it's just another thing that they reveal. It seems to be a constant reveal of new information.
Right. And these things don't help you make the case for just talking about Nefertia. It really gets into why in the hell would you add a detail about this that makes you look as though you're not looking into the phenomena legitimately. The thing is that when you look into the abyss and it's so strange and bizarre, it's because it's so strange and bizarre, and you just have to tell it the way it is. And these are the kind of things that I would tell witnesses to look for, or ask them if they'd seen And I think it's a really interesting detail that we can't just gloss over. Little, in our case, little tiny, they almost look like children's footprints walking to and from locations. One of them was coming down the hillside of a ravine, a very remote ravine in Oregon, in the snow, and it only sank down about 2 inches in about 3 feet of snow and walked down the mountain ridge. I thought that was pretty unusual for a child to be doing. And then in the case of, again, back to Sean and Lisa Fay, they had little tiny children's footprints walking up the ravine from the creek bed towards their house and standing behind their car for a period of time and wiping the snow off the back window and then disappearing. There is no, that's the thing with this too, Mike, is that are you finding a lot of this evidence when it comes to snow? There is no entry point or exit point?
There's, it's a sudden appearance and sudden stop. Although I have witnessed, I have found the start of trackways where, especially there's one that I can think of that there was some dirt pressed in with, there's quite dirty footprints there at the beginning, and then they suddenly go clean after just a step or two, right? And that's it. And then, we've documented hundreds of their footprints from multiple family members, and 100% of the prints go nowhere. They're placed purposely. They're given to us. You can tell, right? It's like that couple visits back, that 8-inch footprint that showed up in front of my car, and that happened in real time. We were standing there when it happened because it wasn't there a second earlier. And these are given purposely. It's just to show their presence. Hey, I'm here, or whatever they're doing, right? And it's always fun to see the adult prints because, like, okay, must be doing something right for the big guys to be, taking their time to do that, right? And just show their presence.
Now, the name Nephitia, it sounds as though it might be linked to the Book of Genesis and the word Nephilim. What do you say to those people that think there's a link between Sasquatch and the fallen angels?
When Nephitia first told us his name, I started spelling it. I wrote it as Nephatia, and at this point I changed it to Nefatia because of how many people use that connection of that name and call him Nephilim. And I think, how ridiculous is that? Because you don't know, you don't know anything about this, about who they are, what they're capable of, their demeanor and the whole Nephilim thing. Are they some offshoots? I don't know. I can't answer that, right? And I basically don't attach any religious connotation, any religious belief to any of this stuff. I just take it as it comes, and I find a lot of people do, and it tends to be from a fear perspective. But with myself, I take it, like I said, as it comes, and I don't attach any belief system to it whatsoever. Just document it as objectively as I can.
Right. Okay, well, let's finish that thought there. You're not a spiritual person or a religious person, or how would you look at your faith?
Oh, I'm definitely a spiritual person. Religion, no, I think religion is just a brainwashing control mechanism. Spirituality has nothing to do with religion, really, in a sense that, I have my belief in an all-loving, great creator. I don't...
Okay, well, have you ever been surprised by, since we're probably talking about a portal here, things coming and going as dictated in something like, the Skinwalker Ranch, have you seen or experienced what you would call darkness coming through a portal either accidentally or channeled through an area? Has it challenged you at all in any way?
No,
No.
I had, we've witnessed kind of like a almost plasma type orb, a pulsating, glowing red orb that bounced around and pretty much gave us a show. That's would be, I guess, is the closest I've seen to something portal wise. I know Dwayne, that was the second time he witnessed something like that. First time I missed it, he'd seen it with his girlfriend, where it was the same kind of reddish, translucent lights. I think he said it was a row of lights, and it ended up turning into this translucent red doorway in the forest. So whether that was a portal or not, I don't know what it was. They didn't witness anything come out of it, as far as from what I recall, what he's told me.
Right. Well, sure. No, that sounds a lot like what happened with Adam Davies and Matt Johnson and John Carlson up in Soha. You know that case, don't you?
Yeah, I know about Johnson.
Okay. Right. But when it comes to what happened to those guys, they describe seeing a red doorway open up in southern Oregon. And in the case of Adam Davies and John Carlson, there was certainly no reason for them to hoax something like that. So I think that's an interesting detail that Dwayne listed there. I've never seen anything like that. We've taken photographs before from people, psychics will call them, say, hey, point your camera in the woods this way. There's a portal. And you're damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of deal, and come away with photographs on your camera that look like shafts of light opening up in the dark woods. There's so much audio that I think is indicative of something coming out of a spot, because there is no entry point and exit point with this audio, especially when it comes to things like snow. You should hear the crunch, 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 or gravel. You should hear the crunch, crunch, crunch of something approaching when it's yards and yards of snow, like in Ontario, or gravel, like it is in Cottage Grove, and then the sudden exit. How do you explain something like that if it's not a portal?
Dimensional, vibrational. I've had instances where, I was in this area I go to in the off time, I guess, that's up in Neff's area. And I go up there alone, often enough. And I remember sitting in my tent one night. It's late. It's one of those really, really quiet nights, and I can hear some stick breaking going on nearby, maybe 50, 100 feet away, whatever it was. And so I said out loud, you can come closer. And next thing I'm getting this, very shortly after, I get a shuffle sound right at my tent wall, like right there. And it's like, okay, I didn't even hear you walk up. You don't hear the footsteps, and they can move completely silent and walk right up on you, really, and snap your neck if they wanted to, right? But they're not. But they do have that ability to move right up on us. And I've had physical contact so many times. This is how I know they're invisible, right? Like certain things certain things are speculation. Other things are solidified through their actions, like I just mentioned, invisibility through physical contact. It just shows me how they can move. Some of the things they do, right? So I do have audio where you hear their footsteps, and then audio where you don't, and they are right there at the recorder. So it seems like anything and everything can happen with these guys. It's unlimited.
That's totally the case, where the audio is so clearly a biped walking up to the recorder. Sometimes it sounds quite human, and you wonder whether or not it is a human. And other times it sounds like an elephant on two legs, and then the anomalous, oh, we're here all of a sudden, and this is happening. And it's just extremely interesting why they pick and choose moments like that, or maybe these are access points of opportunity where they have the ability suddenly to do that. I often toy with the fact that either the doorways or vibrational shifts are stronger and lighter sometimes based upon what the Earth is doing, or it's hard to explain, but yeah, I'm trying. It's early here. We're trying to grapple quantum physics, folks.
I understand, but from what I gather, it seems it doesn't matter that they just have these abilities. But hey, maybe you're right that there's a certain vibrational anomaly going on at the time that they do something that allows them to do it easier. I don't know.
But. Right. So, okay, your last video, you get in hardcore with the UFO link. Do you feel like you're being dragged one certain way, or nudged, as you put it, in a certain direction to understand this deeper, or is this just where you are at the moment?
I think it's just it seemed like a baby step process, just a constant exposure of new things that show a bigger picture, right? I'm convinced there's a connection, because the one, definitely the one UFO incident that happened during the day, I was driving north on the 400 up by Toronto Peterson Airport, and it was about 12:30 in the afternoon, and it was a perfectly clear, not a cloud, literally not a cloud in the sky. It's just one of those pristine days, and I was driving at the speed limit, maybe a little over that, going with the flow of traffic, and I had a transport up in front of me, and it wasn't too far ahead, and suddenly I see this moving shadow come up, and it's going the same direction, and it's going a little faster than it, and I see it envelop the transport, the shadow, and it moves over top of it, and then it's gone, right? And it only lasted a few seconds, but it was placed right in front of my face. And and I'm listening. It's like, okay, well, where's the plane? Where's the sound? There's nothing there. I stuck my head out the window. There's absolutely nothing there. So it was, by our standards, impossible to happen. There had to be something above that to create that shadow, and there was nothing there. So I'm convinced it was a cloaked UFO craft that placed that in front of me to see if I would capture that, right? If I would be aware of it, and I was. And then 15 days later, I was up in Neff's area, and I had another incident, and this time it was at night. It was pristine conditions again. I could see, it was a really clear night. I could see planes way off in the distance, 30, 40,000 feet, whatever they're flying at. And I can hear their motors, no problem, their engines. I can see their flashing lights. Everything's, it's clear. And then I see this light, and it looks like a plane pointed directly at me with its headlight, and it was moving towards me, and it's way off in the distance. And it didn't take long to come up close, and almost immediately I noticed there's no flashing lights on this thing. So I stood up, and I was on this road, and I'm watching, and it flew over the road, not far from me, and the altitude I estimate, maybe a couple thousand feet. And it was one of those perfectly still nights. You could literally hear a pin drop, right? And I'm by myself, and as it passed over the road, it was just silent, not a sound. So it wasn't a drone. There's nothing. There's no drones that are completely silent like that. The size of this thing was. It was a large light. I couldn't see a craft, right, because of this bright light. And yeah, no hum, no motor, nothing. Just flew over silently, and it was kind of like seemed to be a follow-up to the one previous, a couple of weeks before that, which I find they do sometimes. They'll give me a confirmation with a follow-up incident if I'm questioning something. It seems that way sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing detail right there, folks. The fact is that when you experience this phenomenon, like Mike is saying, they will double down and tip their hat at you to say, "Yep, that was us. That was the phenomena presenting itself here." And it's almost a more elaborate move to prove their point to you. Is that what you're saying?
Maybe I don't know. It just seems I look at it all as a gift, really, to
Mm-hmm.
own this and to be at this point where I'm observing details, and I see it at this point too, like 7 years later, from this situation with Dwayne's, is a lot of the stuff we're getting is very subtle at this point, and I'll catch things, right? Like listening back to audio that could slip by anybody very easily, but my ears get perked up when I hear something. It's like, oh, what was that? And, go back and it's like, yeah, I'm quite sure that's them. So it seems that some of the interactions or some of their actions um, become subtle, more subtle. A lot of their activity is subtle to begin with, but it seems that it's a teaching process, a training to look for the details, pay attention to the details.
Right. So, what do you think what is the training for as far as looking for these details? What because it is so minute and it almost is an impractical lesson. I mean, it kind of reminds you of Miyagi and the Karate Kid teaching Daniel's son to move his hands in a certain way while he's painting the fence, and then he uses it for karate. What these details that they want you to notice? What in the hell could they be using them for?
Yeah, I don't know. You got me there. Um, Obviously, something that they're aware of that we're not. Right? They have their world of existence of this um, richly expanded consciousness, this knowing and connection to greater unknown that we're just children taking first steps, it seems, and what they're training for, what they're teaching for, I have absolutely no
Okay, and what about being taken? Do you have any indication? Have you been regressed on any level, either privately or publicly, Mike, to see if you've been visited and taken?
No, I haven't, and it's definitely something I'm interested in and I'm open to, and I hope to, do that at some point. I did back 10 years old. I know I had a sighting, and at the time, I said it was a bear, right? I know it was a Sasquatch at this point. But I've had incidents growing up as a kid too with sleep paralysis, and there's a presence in the room, and our current paradigm would dismiss it as some neurological aspect, something going on there. But at this point, I see it as some interdimensional or spiritual or something, aspect of it, with other intelligence behind it. And yeah, so the sleep paralysis stuff that happens
Mm-hmm.
to many people too, especially when you're a kid in that. That happened to me quite a bit, and you can't move, and it's pretty terrifying. And there's the sense of someone in the room is palpable. It's so thick, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've had this stuff going on throughout my life, so yeah, I don't know.
Right. Do you feel like you were placed maybe over at Dwayne's property as though it wasn't just an accident? It was a meeting that was arranged, or
Yeah,
because we kind of wonder that ourselves, like the people we meet, the conversations we have with them, they're super significant, but we don't understand why.
yeah. At this point, the intelligence we're dealing with, I find it very difficult to believe that this is happenstance. this is just by chance. It seems to me that there is a purpose behind this. I have had an experience where they've shown me an image of them. I, received this telepathic image of dozens of them walking across an open meadow all in the same direction. That was followed by the words, "Soon your people will know." And that was something in itself, because those words were not verbally spoken and telepathically. They, although it was a telepathic instance, they were felt, and really showed me that language doesn't need to have spoken verbal content to understand something being conveyed, right? So there's a real clarity to that. And when they showed me that, it seems to me we're in the midst of a reveal. This is what's going on. And at this point, it seems to me that this situation, that I've been involved in with Dwayne's, has purpose behind it to, as part of that reveal. It's been very controversial, and they know what I'm doing with the information. They know I'm putting it out there. That there's many people I speak to, and things happen, and it seems I'm being listened to and watched closely. So I do think that there was purpose in myself meeting Dwayne and this this situation unfolding and putting it out there. Yeah, it's strange, and some people might think that's just ego talk or something. And no, man, I'm just putting it out there, and it is what it is. But it does seem that there was intention on their part.
Yeah, this phenomenon has a way of checking your ego at the door, and especially with guys, alpha types. And I've seen it time and time again. Generally, most people that are in it for ego's sake are either generally found out quickly to be in it for ego's sake, and they'll be publicly excoriated somehow, some way. But when it comes to collecting evidence like you are, Mike, and like I do you find yourself ever questioning why you're collecting it? Because your ego gets involved in this a little bit to try to either, prove it subtly to other people, or do you understand what I'm getting at? Like, is a little bit of inner conflict with why we're collecting evidence when it seems to be relationship based.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that, and I've collected a lot of evidence, but at this point, like a recent visit, there was some urine in the snow beside footprints that had just been left, and a friend pointed out to me. It's funny because Nefertia, we used to call him Mr. Funny, right? Before we knew his name, because he's a funny guy. So the one trespasser, we started calling him Piss Pot because it sounded close enough to his last name, and he was upset of me exposing him publicly, right? So I actually had Nefertia calling out Piss Pot. I didn't know it when it happened until I played it back, and I was just hysterical. They even wrote it on the chalkboard that same night. But what was my point?
With a joke like that, I don't think you need one. Are you saying that they scrolled out Piss Pot with chalk?
Well, they wrote Piss Pot with chalk on the chalkboard, and then the urine beside the prints. After a while, that's why Nefertia did that. He was being funny. That's why. Because of us calling him Pot. And anyways, to get back to the point, I didn't collect any of that urine. I've been missing, passing up on all kinds of hair and snow where it's got the melt from their foot from a print that's seconds old in the snow. I'm passing up all kinds of evidence because at this point, as much as I'd like to see them proven so we could move forward. And my big thing is that, I would love to see clear cutting, deforestation shut down. This is huge, this part of it. But I've found that it's my thought that, there's a cover up here, and it's because of that UFO connection that has been covered up for decades by military and governments. They've been lying to us, and this is all connected to it. So I had sent hair in for analysis at one point, and from what I was told, it cost somebody their job, because I didn't realize they were doing it on the side. So it was in a U.S. government lab. It was a Russian DNA specialist, and I guess he had told some colleagues, and he ended up getting fired. I guess they went and ratted him out, and he got fired. And I was told his office got flipped upside down. I thought, well, that's a bit extreme. So maybe I'm a threat. I don't know, given evidence like that. So at this point, I'll still collect it, but I'm not. It's not priority, and I'm not that concerned about it. Like I said, I've passed up all kinds of evidence this winter. I've just been taking video of footprints and stuff. And,
right. Well, as you pass up evidence, does activity change in any? Have you noticed a correlation between collecting evidence or not collecting evidence and seeing different types of activity based upon how you interact with an opportunity to collect it? Or is it all just kind of the same?
It seems to me that it's all been kind of the same. They don't seem upset or anything like that about collecting hair from their footprints. They're standing there watching you document and pull hair from their prints when it's only seconds old, right? It's just common sense that they're going to be watching it. They keep giving, right? And it's always been somewhat the same, just unfolding in that baby step process. And regardless of what we do, they know our intention is not to prove them, or we're not trying to trick them for anything. It's just quite open and honest.
Right, but that dance is still available of trying to figure out how they do it. And there is a game afoot, and it's almost a race, of course, between trying to understand how they do it. They do them, understand them better. So it's very difficult for me, at least, to not try to enter into that gamesmanship and outwit them somehow, which sounds ridiculous after everything we said here today. I get that, but the human instinct is to try to outsmart something like this. And I don't think the only time I think that we ever came close to that down in Cottage Grove is when we found this sweet spot to put our recorder where the vocals seemed to be more promising. And it was kind of a hidden little spot, and it seemed to garner better results. Now, when I left it out in the open, we would still get results, but they were a little farther, and it sounded like they were sneaking up a little bit more. But it sounds like maybe you have something totally different. You come away with a name, for crying out loud. By the way, have you seen Nefertia? Have you guys met one-on-one?
He's been seen. I haven't had a close visual. Dwayne and I have, we both had a visual together outside the cottage window at a distance. The visuals have been minimal, although they have been there. And as far as the whole trying to trick them or whatever, outsmart them, I don't do that at all at this point. I simply ask, if I want a handprint or something, I put that intention out there, or I ask a question and they'll give me a written answer, or whatever they do, right? I just tend to be completely open and honest with them, like I said, because I know these guys are outsmarting us by far, And at this point, it seems to me also, they can read our thoughts. So I have to be completely honest, and I think they appreciate that.
Right. And it's a different situation in Cottage Grove because there's other things occurring all at once with the Bigfoot stuff, and you're not quite sure who's going to walk through the back door. So it's a whole different situation down there. It sounds like you're not getting the type of EVPs or ghostly stuff in and around Ontario, are you?
Oh yeah, no, I do capture all kinds of EVPs.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of them are subtle. There's a lot of stuff I just, it's very short, abrupt, and I don't put it out there. It's like because there's so much of it, right? These
Right.
little instances. For me, it seems to be more about just understanding their behavior and their activity through these little EVPs. But I have captured quite a few of them, actually. There was one, too, that really sticks out. It was back in 2013, I think. And I'd had a recorder in my hand and I was talking into it. We were sitting inside the cottage. I'm talking into it, saying what's going on that night. We're receiving all kinds of images being imposed on the camera. And suddenly this voice comes out of thin air and says, "What the fuck was that?" Excuse the term, but that's what was said. And it's clear. And you can tell by Dwayne's reaction. He says, "That came from in here." And I'd heard it too, right? But I was talking when it happened. But it's clear audio, and you hear this, and I think, it must be their children, and I think with their lungs not developed to these massive giants that they turn into at some point, it's they're human size, right?
So you're still equating the EVPs to Sasquatch. Are you getting EVPs that sound like they're from outside of the Sasquatch phenomena?
Well, like I said, there was that one with the Sasquatch sounded like it's talking to something electronic.
Right.
But other than that, it's mainly, I think, Sasquatch. Although, like I said, there was that face in the window too. So I believe there is other things going on. It's just not prominent in that situation.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's hard not to try to draw some parallels here. And I guess the EVPs are one of the parallels for sure. So, Mike, what do you have planned for the future here as far as research? Are you working on any projects? Is there anything upcoming? You have any non-disclosures signed for something that we can eventually watch? What's going on with Mike?
Yeah, I got some stuff planned, not solidified at any point, but I would like to put something together and put it out there for the public at some point. Just give a well-rounded description, understanding of all this that's going on. I recently had the website put up at SasquatchOntario.com, and the guy Keenan there, he did a great job on that for me. But as far as just gonna keep moving forward, and too far down that rabbit hole, I can't go back now, right? So,
right.
Once you learn this stuff, that's it. Your perception of reality is changed, and you can no longer look at the world as you once did. I'm just going to keep moving forward and just go with it and see where it goes, right?
That's the key. All right. SasquatchOntario.com. Is that the main place people can find you? And then Sasquatch Ontario on YouTube if they want to see for themselves and hear for themselves?
Yeah. The .com website, there's a contact form on there if anybody wants to contact me. And I get quite a few people that send me messages and tell me about their experience.
Right.
And a lot of people, they really appreciate this too, because I do get a lot of thanks because I think it gives people understanding. with something that they had no understanding with, and they couldn't understand what was going on. And now that they see, oh, there's this person has the same thing, and so it helps, and I'm there to help people, and it's something that I enjoy doing. Right?
Well, this has been a great show, Mike. I appreciate you coming on. And can you hold the line here after we end this little broadcast? I just want to ask you a question here. But first, thanks for coming on, and let's do it again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on there, Tope. I appreciate it. And hopefully everyone enjoys that.
Okay, man. Good talking to you. All right, Sasquatch Ontario. Go to the YouTube channel. There's a lot of videos on there, several thousand views. So catch up on what Mike Paterson is working on, and get in touch with me at strangebrowradio@gmail.com. I'd love some feedback on this episode. I thought it was an encouraging conversation. There's a lot of overlap going on between mutual casework. So, there's more of a relationship going on, obviously, between Mike and his phenomena than we were ever able to get to, and most are ever able to get to. That's why it's so hard to believe, and I think he knows that. So let me know again what you have to say about that at strangebrowradio@gmail.com. All right, we need to talk about March 7th, 2020, coming up in 6 short days, approximately after tonight. By the time you listen to this, at Manresa Castle from 6 to 9, we have had an issue with scheduling in regards to the coronavirus outbreak in Washington State. In short, Governor Inslee has put Washington State on a national emergency map. We've had our first death up north from where I live, not too far away, and not too far away from where our speaker is. So I have had to cancel a few things, including leaving town for a while. But the show, as far as I'm concerned, still must go on. So I will be there. And I will be presenting a PowerPoint and a presentation based upon portal interaction. And it will be a talk I'll be giving a couple different times this year. So there'll be some new information coming up, of course. So if you are coming to Manresa Castle and look forward to seeing Marcia K. Moore and talking about the Peruvian skulls, you can still do that, hopefully in May, as when our next PodCastle will be. And I thought about putting her on the video screen. We've done that before, but oftentimes something is lost in translation, and it's just not the same as having somebody there. So if you are coming, please still do come. It will be a good show, and obviously Manresa Castle is a spectacular place to show up. I won't do a lot of shaking of hands with any of you. Don't take it personal. And, just come and enjoy yourself while you still can, kind of deal. So that's going to be coming up on March 7th from 6 to 9th. Portal interaction and extended experiencers, and basically how to find your own extended experiencer and what to do with them once you meet them. So these are the things that we'll be bringing up, and I'll bring my computer and PowerPoint and some audio, of course, here to do that. And that is what I wanted to tell you. Okay, moving on into the future here. Episode 60, Into the Tank. If you want to be on episode 61, 2, 3, or 4, or 5 down the road, you can do that. Reach out to me at strangebrowradio@gmail.com. If you're a healthcare provider and want to talk straight up what's going on with the coronavirus and dispel some of the urban legend out there, I would love to have a conversation with you. So if you're a healthcare provider and want to talk, I guess the only news that's really circulating right now besides politics, get in touch with me at strangebrowradio@gmail.com. Okay, guys, that's the show. Hope to see you March 7th at Manresa Castle, Port Townsend, Washington. And, of course, I will see you in the trees.